I'm Ahsante, and since a variety of people watch this channel, some of you may have looked at the title and wondered, what is a nerdfighter? I was actually on an hour-long panel about that very topic, but I'll get to that in a bit. There are a lot of ways to define a nerdfighter, but essentially they're a member of Nerdfighteria, which is the community that formed around John and Hank Green's YouTube videos. If you don't know their channel, The Vlogbrothers, I would highly recommend you checking it out, links in the description. Or the doobly-doo, as they say. A while back, I made a video about belonging in Nerdfighteria, so I encourage you to watch that for a little context to this if you haven't seen it already. I made that video because I wasn't completely comfortable in the community because of how it treated issues of race and feeling excluded from the conversation. I thought they could do better, and I wanted them to do better. You know how you preemptively thank someone for something that you're asking them to do because you know they're gonna do it, right? It was that. I'd been really hesitant to even say that I was a nerdfighter because I'd been worried about being so outnumbered and misunderstood. And I worried about aligning myself with a community that didn't acknowledge racial issues. And it was the response to that video that kept me in the community. I got some really amazing comments from other nerdfighters of color with similar trepidations, which let me know that I wasn't alone in feeling this way. And just a few days later, Hank commented on Tumblr like, yeah, she's right. We need to do better. I've been nervous, but it's something I need to work on. And actually recommended watching my video. And then white nerdfighters came to my channel and said they'd never realized that gap in the conversation and thanked me for bringing it up. And not one person was defensive. No fan acted like the Vlogbrothers could do no wrong. Everyone was receptive and understanding and supportive, and that's when I knew this community was different. Since then, I personally have felt very embraced and listened to, and have felt the larger conversation expanding. In a full circle moment, I got to help Hank with his video on lives and mattering, which is pretty much the video I called him out for not making earlier, so I'm glad he listened and I'm glad I got to help. I've been in Nerdfighter collab channels, I've done Project for Awesome, I hang out with Nerdfighters IRL, I've spoken at VidCon, I work at a place that's pretty nerdfightastic, and most recently I spoke at NerdCon Nerdfighteria, which was a conference held in Boston that celebrated 10 years of Nerdfighteria. NerdCon Nerdfighteria was awesome, and now I really see why people liked the early VidCons. There were not a ton of people, the vibe was so chill, and nerdfighters are always trying to be good people, so everyone was friendly and positive, and there were no stampedes. It felt very safe. I spent a lot of time talking to folks. I got to chat with Lauren Fairweather, I got to chat with Andre from Black Nerd Comedy. Creators were freely walking around and connecting with people as human beings, and that was really great. I spent a lot of time with Leslie because we were both there for work. Hashtag my first business trip, whoop whoop. Also because Leslie knows everyone and I know no one. So I'm exaggerating, but thanks Leslie for letting me hang out with your friends, and thanks new friends. Ahsante was so much fun. Speaking of which, Amanda, Eric, and Allison had a panel on creating a podcast, which was very good and informative, as are most things that Amanda does. Amanda, with her friend Julia, run a podcast called Spirits, a drunken dive into myths and legends. Eric edits the podcast, and Allison does the visual design. Everyone on that team does a fantastic job, and it's a really great listen, so links in the doobly-doo. And I will have another Amanda recommendation at the end of this video, so stay tuned for that. I was also on a couple of panels. I was on one called What is a Nerdfighter with Charlie McDonald, Michael Aranda, Victoria Bongiorno, Joe DeGeorge, and moderated by the one and only Leslie Datsis. I was very nervous about this panel, not even gonna lie. Particularly as a newer school nerdfighter, and this was one reservation I had about going to the conference in general. I was worried about not having a similar experience as everyone else there, and feeling like because other people had been around Nerdfighteria for longer than I have, they know the community better than I know it, and therefore I'd say something that would sound ignorant or was abrasive towards other people's experience. I wrote a post about it on Instagram actually, about what Nerdfighteria has meant as a space to me. It hasn't been home. It hasn't been somewhere where I felt comfortable all the time. It hasn't been formative to my identity. And being at the conference, it was clear that it was that for a lot of people, and they were getting emotional, and they had a lot tied up in Nerdfighteria. And I think that's awesome, and it was great to be there and to be in support of people having these experiences. But I had to be in third person. I couldn't really share in that respect. For me, Nerdfighteria has been more of a corner pub than a home, and I elaborate in the Instagram post. So yeah, I was at a panel at a homecoming and had to point out that I've had issues. And I think this community is great, but I don't identify with all parts of it, and I don't have any undying allegiance to it or its leaders. But I'm here for the discourse. I'm here because it's doing great work, and I'm here because it's connected me to some awesome people. And I think that was a different tune from most of the other panelists, so I at least brought a different perspective. It was a tough conversation, but I think an important one. I was also on a much lighter panel about YouTubing while working with Nathan Zed, Emma Mills, Christina Horner, Aaron Carroll, and moderated by Weezy Wait Up. You can't just say it. You gotta go, Weezy Wait Up. Leslie held a story circle, which was fun as usual, and it was a pretty big circle. My friends over at the Road to Nerdfighteria got to screen their film, which I think had 50 Nerdfighter stories, which is really cool, so I'll link to that. And we made a rug! PBS Digital Studios did this activity from The Art Assignment, which is one of our shows. I'll also link that. The show was hosted by Sarah Green, and she was there, so it was great that people got to say hi to her. And it was cool to see people interacting with each other. We had big rolls of fabric, so people worked on cutting those strips and then weaving those strips into the rug. People would teach newcomers how to weave the rug. Some people would take up cutting strips, some people would take up organizing them or pre-tying them. It was cool to see people integrate themselves into the process in different ways. And seeing the self-governance of people taking turns, gathering around, weaving into the circle at different points, creating something collectively bigger than the individual parts. And that's been my Nerdfighter journey so far. In the comments, let me know if you're a Nerdfighter. I'm actually really curious as to how many people watching out there also identify as Nerdfighters. And if not, is there another online community that you do identify with? You can like this video if you liked it, subscribe and get notifications to see more, and if you want to help me make more and do more with this channel, then please consider supporting me on Patreon. It's a way to leave me a little tip for the videos I make. Totally up to you, but I would greatly appreciate it. As always, remember to live spiritedly and think creatively. So I'm going to start doing this section called What's Making Me Happy This Week. Totally copying Pop Culture Happy Hour, which is an NPR podcast that is top notch. So many links below. But what's been making me happy this week and all month is Amanda, i.e. She's So Mickey's Vita. This girl has been vlogging every day in April, every day, and sharing so much wisdom. She's very organized and efficient, which is totally my jam because I'm a nerd. She's also very thoughtful, so she's talked about her approach to life balance, how tattoos have been meditative, she's come out. It's been really great and so much cool stuff that you should definitely go and watch right now. And thank y'all so much for your positive comments on my channel trailer. Yay! I was so excited to finally get it out, and I was a little burnt out after having worked on it for so long, but I'm really excited that you guys appreciate it. And I'm looking forward to getting back into the groove of creating things regularly, so get ready. It's gonna be hype. Hey, hey. Hey. If you're interested in these sort of updates, reflections, recommendations, then make sure you're signed up for my email newsletter over at ahsantetheartist.com. I'll be sending out the first roundup in the next few days. Well, I'm gonna go fight some nerds. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time.